How to save Zenless on Zero. Let's check it out.
But it's hard not to when he makes such banger content. We're going to be watching these changes will save Zenless Zone Zero. Gonna let you guys know I'm going to be putting out my official review impressions video.
Not to be a copycat, but I've been kind of thinking about doing that myself, actually. About putting out a video of maybe not a review, so to speak, just my views on the game, the things I like, things I'm not a big fan of, things that probably make the game a little better, and things that make the game a little worse, and discuss, and then people in the chat or the comment section can let me know what they think. Because we've had quite some good discussions going on in the comment sections actually recently over the Zenless Zone Zero videos, which has been nice to see. A lot of differing opinions and a lot of good criticism towards the game as well. Not just rage bait that I've seen a lot of from some content creators actually. So it's good to see that people are actually trying to be quite balanced about the game, because it's definitely got its issues. But I do think initially it was kind of overhated, and I think I was quite quick to dismiss the game myself as well. And the more I play it, the more I enjoy it. But once again, it's up to a game to make it enjoyable and immersive and to pull you in right from the get-go. But anyway, let's get into this video.
For Zenless very soon. I think I jumped the gun on my opinions on it a little bit early. And I'm going to give you a full and complete review very, very soon. So keep an eye.
It's kind of the consensus that I'm seeing at the moment, that a lot of people are in that boat. They went a little bit hard, a little bit too quick, and it is one of those games. It's kind of a bit of a slow burner. Things do definitely heat up. It gets more fun. The story's decent in my opinion, and the combat does start to get a little bit more complex.
Eye out for that. Come join us on Twitch if you ever want to watch these filmed live. It's a lot of fun over here. Twitch.tv/X_Juice. We stream every day except for Sunday. And if you come to the Twitch and chat, you'll get one bodily enhancement of your wish. Bigger booty, prettier eyes, smaller ears, and or whatever you would like. So let's go ahead and get into it. What changes will save Zenless Zone Zero?
Yo, you know that a lot of content creators are giving their thoughts about Zenless Zone Zero, the game state, and
I'd like to say, technically speaking, that was not my thoughts on Zenless Zone Zero specifically, like a review. I think people thought it was a review. It was not a review. It was just my thoughts about why people didn't like the game. And people have been very confused about what that was. That was my opinion on why I thought people didn't like the game and why I judged the game very harshly.
That's one thing as well. People seem to get those confused. There are people's opinions, and then there's... which, at the end of the day, all reviews are opinions. But to me, there's definitely a difference between voicing your opinions on something and giving a review. I saw Tectone getting a little bit mad about this. And I'm not saying he wasn't right in some of the things we were saying, because the game does get better and it does get more fun. And it's kind of not unfair, but it sucks that you come to a view early on with the game, because like I say, it does get better. But I think it is totally fair to give your opinions on a game, whether critical or positive, within the first hour of playing a video game. Now, giving a review is a totally different matter altogether, because to give a review, you're going to give a score that becomes, it's totally subjective, but you're giving not an objective, a subjective view of the game to other people to digest and decide whether they delve into some, or just to see it from a critical point of view. I don't ever look at reviews as a decision on buying a game or purchasing a game or getting into a game. Just nice to see what other people's views are sometimes. But I think with a review, you definitely need to have got a decent amount of hours into a game, depending on whether it's a live service or it's open-ended, or complete a story game, because you can't really give a review on the complete content if you haven't completed the content. But that being said, if you're just giving your views on a game, I think you can give your views within the first half an hour, an hour. If a game doesn't pull you in, if it's got bad combat, if it's terribly voiced, if it's got terrible mechanics, the gameplay loop's trash, and even if that stuff gets better, I think it's totally fair to say right off the bat, this is trash in my opinion. It's different from giving a review. If you give a review and say this game's trash, and then you look and you've got 45 minutes on records, then that's some BS. But I disagree with a lot of what Tectone was saying, but I also agree that he was kind of right. A lot of the people who were saying that stuff have kind of come around. So that is a point. But yeah, I think you're totally fair to give negative viewpoints on a game. right off the bat, man. Too many people get that twisted as if you're giving a review. You're just saying what you feel about the game. It's totally different than actually putting it across as a review with a score and such, because then you do need to play the majority of the content if it's open-ended, as I say, or complete it.
As well.
The community was kinda concerning because this is the most gacha game that divided the community. Not only because of tribalism, but also because the game wasn't very good, but also wasn't very bad. So in a
Yeah, it was incredibly mid. And people...
Exactly. Gave it a 6 out of 10, even though I haven't reviewed the game, but just kind of how I feel about the game. I was like, you know, it feels like kind of a solid 6. Not a review though, just my feelings on the game, because I don't, even if I ever reviewed a game, which I've only ever done once, I don't really like giving scores to game, but that was just my view. I was like, yeah, it's kind of mid, it's just above average, it's kind of a solid 6, man. But the game's fun as well. I've been enjoying it.
Wanted to hate on the game because it's Hoyo, and so people got really, really upset about it. And then some people think that Hoyo does no wrong, and so they act like it's...
True. People massively glaze Hoyo, and then some people just hate on Hoyo because it's Hoyo. I think it's just because they're the biggest fish in the pond, so you're always going to get the glazers and you're always going to get the haters.
Not mid, and then they're also insane about it. But it is a mid game. It is a good enough game. It's not anything insane. It's not anything crazy, but it's good. It's fine.
rare
Use to describe
occasion,
it.
I tried to assemble the mint pickers,
I should be the only motherfucker getting
the TV watchers,
It's so easy. It's because you don't play fighting games.
the sweaty clickers,
And this can give you
Do you guys think EO plays fighting games? I want to have EO.
The gunk in the mouse, I would have to clean that. We all get a bit of gunk here and there now and again, you know. But if you're going to put it up on the on your YouTube channel, maybe give it a clean.
To teach me fighting game stuff. Actually, though, if you guys don't know, like, I love EO. I think EO is one of the smartest, most interesting people in gacha. I think he's so cool and so fun. And
know that
so
dude,
I
so
really, I
compliments.
want him to come on and just teach me all of the terms that he be using. He'd be talking about plinking and juggling and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Can you come please teach it to me and my dumb audience?
some major tendonitis.
and I asked the whole community about the changes that can make Zenless Zone Zero better, and I'm gonna mention the things that people are talking about the most, so we can make it
All right,
more
let's get into it.
formulated about the things that the game actually needs rather than individual personal preference. And I'm gonna start with something that doesn't really bother all people, but especially mobile gamers, which is optimization for mobile and the game size. This is
I just want to say one thing before we get into it. This is totally different to what he's about to talk about by the looks of things, but the actual, because it was showing off the banners and the pulls, the actual music for pulling, in my opinion, sucks. It just doesn't get that monkey part of my brain all fucking hyped, ready for the pull, hyped up about what I'm going to get. I don't know if it linked in with, with the actual animation as well, that it kind of just, compared to Star Rail and compared to Wuthering Waves and compared to maybe even like Solo Leveling Rise and Genshin, I just feel like the actual pull animation is kind of lacking. And I think with all the different TVs, sometimes it's not obvious right away that instant of what you've got, whether it's SA or whatever. It's a very small thing, but I just think it's a little, because pulling is a big part of these games. And I think Star Rail's probably got the best one. It makes it really gets you going. It gets the gamba going, which you could see as maybe that's a better thing, that it's not so psychologically drawing. That's just me. Obviously, other people might find it different, but I don't know, that the music doesn't seem to suit the build up to the reveal of the pull, in my opinion. Little thing, not heard many people talking about it. It kind of bothers me a little bit.
Ooh, I have been realizing that there are a ton of people who are super, super upset about this. I've been getting a lot of comments about this
file
specifically,
size.
and I think it's so interesting how this is not a primary controversy for Zenless, because certain specific subreddits are not overly dramatizing how bad it is and making it out to be the worst thing ever. But I just think it's so very interesting how like barely anyone is talking about the fact that the optimization is also a huge problem in Zenless Zone Zero. I wonder why that is when it's a Hoyo game, that the optimization is not complained about ad nauseum, but in Wuthering Waves, it was in fact complained about ad nauseum. Very interesting to me, very much.
Before we talk about the
Glazers, that's
insane
why.
things that need to change, let's start with something obvious. Because some people are experiencing lag or performance issues. And that's why this video is sponsored by LagoFast. Are you having
Respectfully, no. You're not, no advertisement for free on this channel. I'm so sorry.
also the game size being 57 gigs is kind
Oh, come on, Hex. Just let people advertise for free on your content. Come on.
of insane, and
is
that's
insane.
not only on Hoyoverse, that's also on a lot of other companies that don't care about the game size anymore. Because
I think that the reason that the game size is so big is because they want to force you to uninstall Wuthering Waves. Because you have to choose. You have to choose. You're not going to have.
Based, right? That's what it is. I think probably, in reality though, I think it might be down to that's the, what's it called? The video system where you can watch back all the cutscenes. Because every cutscene's stored and ready for you to watch. Maybe that's a thing. Not a game developer, so I'm not entirely sure. But I feel like that could potentially be the reason why it's pretty beefy. for what
Have
it is.
enough space on that little iPhone, that little Android. So you have to choose. This is a conspiracy. Force you to sabotage Wuthering Waves. However, jokes
Dude,
aside, this
For
game
real, I just don't know how people can play these sort of games on mobile. Even though I think this probably lends itself to mobile a little bit better than something like Wuthering Waves. But I'm like, it just blows my mind that people can actually play things like Wuthering Waves on mobile. It's just like, it's just crazy to me.
is 55 or whatever. Really fun fact is that Elden Ring and its DLC combined, which was essentially an open world massive game, and then an expansion that was almost the same size, is 66 gigabytes.
Yeah, but FromSoft are like a masterclass in game development, aren't they? Like, come on, like, like they are the tippity top when it comes to pretty much everything within their games, really. And that's coming from somebody who's not even a massive fan of those games, but I understand the quality, from an outsider's point of view. Now, I've got quite a lot of Souls games, and I've played quite a bit of I've played a decent amount of Elden Ring, but I understand from a non-fan's point of view that they are one of the top devs out there.
Less than 10 gigabytes more than a instance-based gacha game.
Jeez, dude, look at freaking Call of Duty. That shit, like, pretty much takes up the entirety of people's PlayStations now, doesn't he? It's ridiculous.
Which is insane. I don't know why it takes so much space. It's so weird to me.
Zenless being 57 gigs and Wuthering Waves being 18 is kind of crazy. And if you want to find an excuse for that,
Is that the actual size of Wuthering Waves? I very rarely actually check the size of games, if I'm honest, unless they're huge, unless they go over like 200, 100, 150, 120. I really don't particularly check them being on PC. But that's insane. There's a size difference there. Like, I think it's got to be down to the saving of the recording, surely.
no, you can't, other than laziness, because they can work on that. It takes time. Now let's talk about the top one thing, the thing that everybody's talking about, which is how the game should handle the difficulty. I shit you not, more than 100 people are talking about the same thing and getting a lot of likes in their comments, so I need to address this. So
I have thoughts on this. I'm going to let him say his thoughts first, and then I will give.
I want to say a point that I'd like to add right off the bat. I think they need to add another difficulty, one that's specifically catered towards console and PC from the start. I'm not saying we don't know what's going to happen the further we delve into Endgame, because it definitely does jump up a little bit, and you have to use a little bit more complexity and resistance come into factor, and getting DPS checks, getting past DPS checks are going to be a thing, and using the right teams. And there definitely is a little bit more layers and nuances to the way combat works, but none of that's ever explained to you either. The game's kind of like puts you in it teaches you to play brainlessly, and then says, oh, now you need to have a little bit more complexity here and a bit more nuance to what you're doing, but never tells you that. You just kind of figure out, I need to be doing something different here. But because I think the game's catered to mobile, of course, and I think the game is, in general, the way it's designed, with it being like this more instanced, smaller game that's kind of like the tertiary game for Huyo, I just think there should be a mode that's specifically designed for PC. You can play it on mobile, but because the start of the game is incredibly easy, and I get it. People will say, well, it's the start of the game. You're still kind of in the tutorial area, and gacha games are not really difficult. But I don't know, man. Like, I feel like there was definitely more complexity and more nuance and, you know, even a little bit more thinking right off the bat with Wuthering Waves. Personally, it wasn't hard, but you had to be engaged. And I feel it's not so much that the game needs to be necessarily harder, just more engaging.
Give my thoughts and we'll see if we agree. And if we don't agree, I will be going to Steorg's house and beating him into submission until he makes a video apologizing to me personally.
So here's the problem with the difficulty of Zenless Zone Zero. A lot of people are saying, no, the game shouldn't be difficult. You know that gacha games aren't Elden Ring. So the problem...
Yeah, dude, I hate that argument as well. As if gacha games aren't supposed to have some level of complexity to combat and have a little bit of a difficulty to them in terms of mechanics and all that sort of stuff. People are like, well, it's a gacha game. And it's like, but I get that. But don't we want, like, even if you're in the gacha space, we want more game in the gacha. That's why I really like Wuthering Waves, because it feels like that's a game with a gacha system, just like Genshin is really. And, well, I guess Honkai as well. So, I you know, I hate that argument because it's kind of like as if, well, right then, we shouldn't have a game, you know? Really?
With these people
Basic
is that they
viewpoint,
only
you know,
see black
you
and
get what I'm
white.
getting
They
at.
only see too easy or too hard. They cannot meet in the middle, because here's the problem with the combat in Zenless Zone Zero. The skill floor in this game in most modes is too low, even compared to other gacha games. Some people
Yeah, I
say,
agree.
well, you can learn more in the combat and learn more about the characters and more about the parry systems. But here's the thing, if you
You don't really need to learn too much about the parry system though, because the parry system's, it's quite open in terms of how much time you get to parry, and the parry system's a little bit automated anyway. You can do your dodges as well, but you get forced into the character swaps system, which I get it, it's the way the game works, but you don't really need the game to be easy off the bat to learn that system. I feel like that's really a little bit too handholdy for a simple system.
can get S in every level by mashing the same button without the
True.
need of understanding the character's synergy.
Dude, you can get S in a lot of stuff. Like I've been AFK a couple of times, and I've been taking damage while I'm typing something on my other monitor, then hopped into the game and then just cleared the instant and got an S. That's kind of wild, and I'm on challenge mode as well. I think that's kind of wild.
Or passives and occasionally counter, then there is something wrong. But I would say
I agree 100% with this. Who cares if there's a high skill ceiling if the skill floor is in hell? I'm kind of in the middle on this because I do agree. It was like the main thing that tilted me the first day that I played this game, that I quite literally didn't move and just would switch characters out and press X, not use any abilities, and I fully S ranked on a piece of like challenge content.
That was my point. In like, as you get a little bit towards the end game and some of the end game, there is a little bit of an extra nuance to the combat, but the game teaches you to play like a zombie at the start, which is kind of weird. I think I get the argument that people are like, well, you know, you're in the start area again, not an excuse. It's weird that the game teaches you to play in a certain way, then starts to switch it up, but doesn't explain to you, oh, by the way, now shit's getting a little bit more spicy, and this is what you need to do. It's just like you're kind of still on that autopilot mode. And I think some people will run into certain content and be like, dude, what the fuck? Because they're not understanding that they're just playing it wrong, but the game's taught them to play it wrong, if that makes sense.
Like, I didn't dodge, I didn't parry really on purpose, I did it on accident if I did, and I just hit X incessantly. It doesn't feel very good early on, especially if you're somebody who went into it thinking it was a combat-based game, because they called it a...
I must admit, even though I agree with that, I kind of expected it as well from just watching gameplay that I saw. Dude, shit was just, you know, how passive the enemies were. It was like, okay, this is kind of what we're going to get here. This game is definitely going to be, at least at the start, easy, because that was my assumption. I was looking at all the gameplay and I was like, this has got to be super early because these enemies are acting kind of like you're in the initial tutorial of how to play the game, you know, how to learn, you know, when you're in a bit of a combat and it's like, this is how you dodge, this is how you parry, this is how you use a special attack. It felt like that's how the enemies were reacting, which is kind of wild that it stays like that for quite a while, actually. And even in some of the more difficult content, the enemies still kind of stand around a lot of the time, not doing much. Now, there are more aggressive enemies in some of the later content, but a lot of them still just kind of just like, hey, yo, hey, I'm chilling, you know, might attack you now and again. I'm really going to telegraph it, but not going to do much else. And it's kind of weird. Yeah, what's going on, Cheese?
Combat-based game in the live stream before it released. So it was kind of a reasonable, wasn't even an assumption, it was a reasonable expectation that it was going to be combat focused. However,
That's fair.
if you do engage with the mechanics of your own volition early on into the game, it makes it a lot more fun, and you
Which is what I did try to do. And those mechanics will be more necessary later. But as I said, game kind of teaches you to play without them, and then doesn't really get you to engage in them in any meaningful way later on.
get really big damage numbers, and you get a lot of that satisfying gameplay that Dalway was telling us all about. It does get more challenging as you go on, but I think that this is a fair thing to be frustrated by.
That
Yeah,
for
definitely.
the 2 endgame modes, we finally can see more challenging content. And it's not insanely challenging, but it's good for a gacha game. That's what we need. But some people might counter this, but okay, the endgame modes have a little challenge in them, so let's make the casual modes casual. I say that there are 2
It's more about resistances and DPS checks, really. I think I've just been spoiled a little bit more by the difficult content in Wuthering Waves, which is difficult more from a mechanical and reaction and pattern type of gameplay, where this is more the typical gacha system of, hey, this character's going to hit hard, it's going to take a lot of damage, and if you want to get things done in a set time, you're going to need to be putting out a lot of DPS.
casual, and the way that we can fix that is by adding more enemies and make it a real hack and slash or beat 'em up game. Give them even less HP. I'm not talking about them making more damage. No, this make it for the end game modes for hardcore players. We know that this is a casual game, so let's make it casual in a good way by, for example, doubling the
To me, though, a game being casual doesn't have to mean it's easy. It just means you can tackle it in bite sizes. You don't have to learn crazy metas. You don't have to be super invested. You don't have to grind like mental. But a casual game can have a level of difficulty to it. I think sometimes people get that a little bit mixed up. There's plenty of casual games that are kind of difficult. It doesn't mean they're hardcore. I think sometimes people get that a little bit mixed up, as if difficulty equals hardcore, which I suppose there's a big crossover, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think casual games can be a little bit spicy and still be casual games.
amount of enemies, giving them a little less HP. With how exciting the combat can be, defeating a lot of enemies in this game without the need of a lot of challenge is kind of fun by itself in this game. And this
I'm going to say that I disagree, because I don't personally enjoy having to run around to all of the different little enemies and kill them individually, and it does break some of the mechanics when they're smaller, because if you knock them and then you get to do those like fast switches, I don't know what all the terminology for all these things are. It stops the fast switches when the enemy dies, and I find it very annoying. I personally would actually like more of the bigger enemies and not the kind of like trash mobs. It would be great if there was
I think I agree with both, actually. I'd like some areas where there is almost a sea of enemies in front of you that you can plow through. Like he said, there would have to be a little bit more squishy so you can go through them easier, but give you a bit of that satisfaction of an ARPG kind of satisfaction of being that god that's just mowing through a crowd of enemies. But I also do agree as well, I would like some more content where there is multiple bigger dudes and a little bit of a mix of both, actually. I think that could work. They're both good points.
just more mechanics you needed more mechanics to play with some of these trash mobs for me.
I think
because the
wave
trash
modes
mobs, you
would be
just
kinda
kind of
cool,
like
where
cycle
you
through your
kinda get-
cycles of
You
characters
kind of get swarmed as well. That'd be kind of cool.
and get your buffs and then slap them, and it doesn't feel all that fun to me. 100% I agree there needs to be adjustment, but I'm not sure if this is the one. I would love to see what could be done, but I don't know nothing about game development. I just play them.
is like the problem, which is we don't know what Hoyoverse exactly wants with the game. Do they want to make it a
That's the thing. It is kind of difficult to get an idea of what Hoyo want this game to be. I personally, it feels like Hoyo kind of want it to be just a game that keeps people in the ecosystem of Hoyo. And if you're playing all three, you're going to have a major update every other week. So you're going to kind of go from Genshin to Honkai to this and then back. And, I feel like that's kind of what it's designed to be. Could be totally wrong, but that's what it feels like, to stop people going outside the ecosystem and then when they're scratching the itch of this, it makes them think, oh, let's go back and play Honkai now. I haven't played it for a week or so, and I can get invested back into that. And then, oh, do you know what? New update for Genshin. Let's go play that. And by the time you finish that, oh, new ZZZ update. And that kind of feels like what it is. And then probably soon we'll have another major title from them. And then every single week you'll have a Hoyo update that will, if you're a fan of those games, keep you locked into that ecosystem. Then you'll be on the daily grind. The FOMO will be real.
They hack and slash? Do they want to make it a hardcore game or a side game? Because they said all of these things. It's not like we're assuming. They said in an article that it's a side game. They said that they want to make the game harder in the future. So it's hard for the players to know what to expect. But this is...
I think they could do both. It can be a side game, but it can also have difficult content for people who maybe want it to be their main gacha game or their secondary gacha game, or just a game that they can grind. I think endgame content in this game has lots of potential, in my opinion, especially if they tweak the way you engage with the combat, maybe just a little bit, and the difficulty of things, and the variety of content with the endgame. I think it can genuinely have probably potentially the best endgame in the Hoyo ecosystem, which is not hard, but still.
The main good change, in my opinion. The second thing, which is like, was almost on par with the difficulty problem, is the TVs. Now, a lot of people were saying...
TVs are awful. The TV.
I disagree. I think it is a bit of a hot take. I disagree. I agree with Gacha in this sense, and I was saying it myself before I even watched that video. The TV system isn't inherently a bad system. It's just applied badly. It shouldn't be a vehicle for telling stories. It shouldn't be ham-fisted into the story. It's too abstract to engage with the story, but it is definitely a cool little system that adds to endgame or extra non-mandatory content for either farming, for puzzles, for potentially just adding extra layers to roguelike elements in the later game. Having like the levels and going deeper into dungeons and having the TV system dotted throughout to add something a little bit extra. In my opinion, I think that is a really cool way for it to be applied. A lot of people just hate it. Totally fair. Can understand that. It's not the most engaging system, I guess, if you really want to just get involved in action combat. But I think it's a decent system. I just think it's been badly applied by Hoyo.
Like the first 10 hours are miserable. I hated it.
I agree as well. I do think that how it's applied at the start of the game as well can turn people off massively. And that's a fair point as well.
They're awful. I don't like them at all. I really hope they rethink how they have utilized the TVs in the very beginning of the game. They're utilized better in other things, but in the story, the TV...
Okay, glad to see the Hexy's kind of agreeing there, because I haven't seen many people saying that. They're just like, they want it ripped out, but I think it just needs to be moved, basically. The system just needs to be moved from where it is.
These are wretched. I hate the puzzles in the TVs. They are miserable. I never want to do any of the modes that require me to go into the TV puzzle shit. I can't stand them. Please do them differently. I don't know if they will because it's Hoyoverse, but God, I hate. I
think it'd also make the instances more engaging because they are really used as a filler from going from instance to instance, aren't they? Really, the story bit to story bit, or if you're in some of the other part of the content, it's just kind of like filler, which is fine, and it gets you from point A to B of different combat. I would rather be able to just travel between that combat. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy. Just give me some sort of linear area traverse with some crates here and there and some little points of interest on the way that maybe add to the story as the characters are waffling away about what's going on and you're seeing things around you, and it just becomes way more immersive and engaging. I think that will be good as well.
hate the TVs.
Whether that will happen is a different thing. I think the TV system might just go away to somewhere else and that extra bit won't be added.
Remove the TVs. And I would like that TVs can be removed in a lot of modes and in story, but I think it's too late now to remove them. And I do understand that TVs are kind of the proxy, and a lot of people argue that you kind of remove the proxy's role in the story if you remove TVs. But here's the thing, anything that...
That's what I was saying. They do canonically make sense in the game because it is... You are interacting as a proxy there, aren't you? You're sitting at your computer and you're kind of moving the bang boo around and the team's following along. But again, Why can't it be that you just go into, and of course this is going to need major work, I guess, or you actually are controlling the Bangbu, traversing from instance to instance, and the team's following you along, kind of like an overworld section in a old school JRPG. And he even have it where you hit an element and it goes into the old school random combat, you know, when you're just going along and it's like screen cracks and smashes and you go into combat. I think that could be kind of cool, actually. And that way then it would make those areas simple. It could be kind of like how it is in Star Rail, basically. There's enemies dotted around and you can engage with them. Some of them pop up randomly and there's different things to engage. And I think that would be way better.
That feels forced in a game is not good. At least in the story, they have to reduce them as much as possible because they disconnect you from the story, although it's still happening inside
Too abstract, bit of a distraction. Takes away from the story beats.
The TVs. So they make it a little easier and make it easier to understand the story inside the TV. So they can keep the TV system, but they can make it better and add more animations and things that makes it less immersion breaking by also making it take less time and adding more time for cutscenes.
Suppose that's a middle ground. They could do something like that. You know, add more animation, more scenes with the characters being more prominent on the screen too, to remind you that you actually are doing part of the story, because it doesn't feel like you're doing the story, in my opinion. You kind of just feel like you're doing a little puzzle that's kind of going on, which is a little bit of an odd choice. It feels like it almost wasn't play tested properly, and by people who were outside the development of the story as well, even though it was, because they had the closed beta tests and stuff, and it seems that they have reduced it from what people have said. So I guess they are listening to a degree.
And also these visual novel scenes, which I know take more time, but this makes the game way better. But this is for the story, because as far as I've seen, TV mode in the Sim Uni or the Holo Zero is pretty much welcomed by most people.
Yeah,
and that's why I think they
I like it. I said that as soon as we got into the Holo Zero system. I was like, here is where the TV system shines. This is a perfect spot for it to be.
should double down on the Holo Zero, by the way. The Holo
I like the TVs. I like the aesthetic of the TVs. I like that it adds something that is incredibly unique to Zenless. I just think that the way that they're used, the puzzles that you have to do, and I think that the story that you have to do with the TVs feels bad. It's like, I want to just get through the
I
story.
don't mind the puzzles, but I do dislike it being used in the story.
Because I'm just skipping story. I don't really care. I'll watch the cutscenes. The pretty animations are cool. But like having to get through so much of the TVs, and like yesterday I was going through and I got a freaking puzzle TV thing on, it was like an exploration one, and I was like, dude, the last thing that I want to do is continue playing this game if I have to do this. I don't want to do the puzzles. I also think that,
And there's a lot of people that feel like that as well. I don't feel like it myself yet, but I can see in the story it will start to get a little bit great. And if it stays the way it is, you know, if you're 40, 50 hours in on version 2.3 of the game and the TVs are still focused heavily in the story, I do think that'll be a problem.
whatever the speed up does, it doesn't speed anything up enough. The speed up is
Agree.
not speeding up. It does not make it feel
It's
very
trash.
much better. I barely notice whether it's on or off. I think an auto button would be great, or just make them like there's a high amount of
I just think it shows the problem with the TV system, personally. And I get it, maybe it's designed for people who are doing rerolls, and I know the skips in Wuthering Waves and stuff, and that's, you know, welcome because some people don't want to do that. But I think it just shows to me how the TV system interferes with the story, and the devs kind of see it as well.
tedium there. I don't like it at all.
Zero is a very good endgame mode. It's fun. I'm actually enjoying this mode the most, so I hope they improve it more and more because they kind of cooked with this mode, to be honest.
agree.
Another thing in the game which is might not bother some people, but it's kind of annoying, and if it's a little fixed, it will be a lot better. The amount of loading screens that we should have. Like to
Thank you for talking about this.
Yeah, I agree as well, actually.
I feel like nobody's talking about the freaking loading screens, dude.
There is a lot for a game that's really just instanced areas. There is a lot, isn't there?
Where you go, there's a loading screen, and sometimes they nicely will cover up the loading screen with like a little animation or a little flourish. But dude, there are so many loading screens. Everything's a freaking loading screen.
True.
It sucks. I also think that's part of why I dislike the TV.
They looked at Starfield and was like, not enough people hate that system. Let's ramp it up a little bit for this, what is in essence, quite a small game. Not that Starfield's got an excuse, but, at least it's quite a big game. But yeah, loading screens suck. I guess on a phone, you probably don't really notice it so much because I don't game on mobile. But I would imagine there's a lot of loading screens in mobile games. I don't know. But being somebody who plays on PC, it's nice when you don't have many loading screens. And because I've got a good PC, they're usually really quick. But yeah, they suck, dude.
TVs as well, because within the TV modes, there are shit tons of loading screens that are covered up by nice little animations. And it is so freaking annoying. It wastes so much time. Like, what are you loading in between the TVs?
Go from a place to place.
Exactly. And I feel like while you're doing the TV system, they could be loading in so much stuff that you don't necessarily need that. That goes back to the optimization issue though, doesn't it? The game being so big and then still having all that sort of stuff in is kind of a weird place to be.
You have to be in a loading screen and it's annoying. It might be too late, but I think they, at least for the future, they need to start removing these loading screens. People wanted to talk about the exploration that exists in the game. We have some...
There is no exploration. We watched the Sticks video yesterday. He was talking about New Eridu, like exploring New Eridu. There's lots to do. And it's like, there's not really much to do in New Eridu at all. The game has very, very little exploration or any real want to explore. There's like, even in, you might be lucky if there's a couple of crates to break in the combat that are literally right next to the dude you're fighting. It would be nice even in the instances if there was just some little, even if they're just linear, branching paths that go down to a chest to open or something like that.
Chests to open like this, and my take about this is either remove the exploration or make it good. This half-baked shit is ass. Like, add more.
Agreed. I never want to walk around anywhere. The loading screens are also too long. I'm so glad someone is talking about this. I feel like barely anyone has addressed the fact that there are so many loading screens.
Things to explore.
It's a good point. I haven't really seen anybody speaking about it, actually.
Explore in the game. You don't need to make it an insanely open world game, but at least make it like Etches.
That's a perfect example, actually, where he goes into the metro station there. Why? What the fuck is that area all about? It's literally just a square area with nothing there. It's, like I say, there is no exploration in this game. It's either just don't have these areas or give them something, some reason to be there. Give you something to do when you go there. Like, a little bit of immersion, maybe.
Or if
maybe
MC
we'll get this
doesn't
later,
run fast enough. I agree with you there as well. Why is she doing all of that movement? Why is she swaying side to side like that and running at like half a foot a minute? Let this girl sprint. Let her put her arms up. Get your knees up. Lift your feet, girl. MC runs like when someone's crossing the street in front of your car.
I swear, Hoyo hate making you be able to traverse quickly or intuitively, though. Look at Genshin, man. That's one of the worst things in that game, in my opinion. Getting around the world. Honkai isn't any better, really. At least you feel like you can actually sprint in that game. And I know there's newer characters that have movement mechanics and stuff, but I think that's one of Hoyo's weakest points, in my opinion. Is getting around the world that you're in.
Or they do that little pretend run where they kind of just put their arms up, but they sort of walk the same speed. That's how she runs everywhere. Pick your goddamn feet up if you're gonna be hasty, bro.
You don't want to do this, just remove it. It's weird. That's what I'm saying, but they do not know exactly what the direction of the game is. Now, not a lot of people talk.
It's like, why do you need a loading screen to go from that empty space there into that small space of New Eridu? And then when you go into anywhere else, there's another loading screen. It's kind of weird, isn't it?
About this, but I wanted to mention it, which is the UI. I don't think there is a problem with the UI, but I wanted to mention that something that can make your experience better, which is exists in the game already, and somehow they don't tell us about it, which is you can customize the UI in the game. So there's a quick
I did not know that.
Menu that can almost get you to everything, and you can customize it by going to settings and then input and clicking on the last option, and you can make your own quick menu and put.
I did not know that. So why does the game not explain little things like that? That's a quality of life thing there, because I am slowly changing my mind about the UI a little bit. I still like the UI. I think it looks gorgeous. The UX design's great and all that. But I must admit, it's not the most intuitive. It really isn't. Sometimes I am like, oh, I forgot where that place is now. And I know that'll come with the more time you play a game. Of course, even UI that's complicated, the more you play a game, you do just tend to get your grasp of it. But that shouldn't be the case. UI design, it's like website design, isn't it? App design. It should be intuitive to the second you get on. You know where to go. It's almost like, you know, it's designed for babies, really. Which I think the more I play, I feel that the UI isn't so great in that way. But why the hell are they not telling you about this? Unless the game did. I do not remember that at all, though. But that's well, I'm going to have a look at this when we get back on the game. I didn't know that.
The things that you need to access. But the only
That's not bad. I still don't. I think the UI is very visually nice. It
Yeah.
looks pretty, like
it looks
visually,
gorgeous, it does.
aesthetically delightful. However, I think the UI is needless.
I think that's one thing about this game overall. Even though I like the game, once again, I have to say that. I think it is a lot of style over substance, though. And there could be the argument that all gacha games are that. But I think this game is very flashy, man, with sometimes that pizzazz, that style, that flashiness just isn't backed up with the substance behind it in a lot of cases.
Complicated. I don't like how many menus are within menus are within menus. And I
Yeah,
also
yeah.
don't like that there are menus that you can't get into even though you've got all these menus and menus unless you go to a special place. That annoys me very
Yeah.
badly. However, the quick menu, very helpful, and I will be
Feels like bloat when it's like that.
utilizing that.
problem with this is that it doesn't
And to me, the best version of a UI is a UI you never have to think of. It is something
Exactly,
most people
it's
will
true.
eventually get used to, and then we'll be able to enjoy how pretty it is. But the UI is incredibly unintuitive and
Basically just said what I've said. It's like websites. Great website design isn't about it necessarily looking the most gorgeous, although that's always a bonus. It's about it being easily accessible and almost being instinctual in how you navigate. It's obvious what things are. You don't need to be like, wait a minute, where's the settings or where's this particular thing? It's kind of just, it tells you without telling you because it's designed so well.
friendly. I don't like that you have to go everywhere to do different things. You have to go to the artifact place to level your artifacts. You have to go to the bamboo place to level the bamboos.
Yeah, I don't
You
like
have
that
to go to
either.
the tutorial place to look at the tutorials. And it's
Why can't I just like level my bamboos from in the menu? I get it. They kind of want you to go there. But then again, it feels like I say this flashy visual thing that it's cool to have it if you want to go there. And the first time you learn about it, it's cool that you go there. But let you do it in the menus, man.
just so unintuitive. You have to think about it way too hard. You have to like remember where things are.
Yeah,
and
I
it's
agree with
super
that.
annoying.
have every single thing that you can access in the game for some reason, so like internet and things like that. I know that you can access this by pressing E, but adding all of these things will be cool. And for the other UI, I took some time to understand what's going on because it's kind of different than other gachas, but it's not really bad. I don't think it's bad. It just takes some time to understand and it's not as usual.
It's just unintuitive. It's not intuitive. It's not bad. But if a UI is not intuitive, it's, you know, I guess there's the argument there that it's bad, isn't it? Because that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be intuitive. It's how you traverse around things. So if it's not easy to do and intuitive, again, probably bad, isn't it, really?
Move the lollies. Now, the actual next thing that I want to talk about is the stage designs. Now, I know this is not an open world game, so
I mentioned this. It's a linear game. It doesn't mean that the instances have to be samey and kind of boring. I mentioned yesterday when we were playing and, you know, when we got into some of the areas, oh, dude, this area looks pretty. It's nice and bright. I like it. There's a lot of areas that are just like bland and grey, or like these areas. You're in a simulation, man. Allow me to fight in different cool areas. You know, the sky's the limit. Have nods to other Hoyo games and have an area that's set in that. I was saying before, it'd be kind of cool that when the Street Fighter collab comes, that maybe we'll have an arcade game in the arcade that is actually Street Fighter, and that could even have stages within the simulation that are kind of like Street Fighter areas. How cool would it be that you're fighting an area that was a Street Fighter map and the crowds are in the background and stuff like that? I think that would be dope.
they are only making stages. And if you only
I would really like to see what he says about this because I also feel like this has not been something that people talk about very much.
make stages, at least make the stages look different. I know that they will look different in the
Bit
future,
of
but
variety.
for now, every stage is the same place. And I know that Hoiverse is very good at making
one thing that I hated, or I didn't hate, that was one of my problems with Snowbreak Containment Zone. You went through instances that were just plain grey white areas that felt so samey that like it was like it really took away from the game, in my opinion. One thing I've liked, we will be checking the update on that game. It does look like they've addressed that with some of the areas. They look a lot more bright and colourful and different, which is good to see.
Maps and, you know, beautiful places, so they should add more variety to the environment. Like, for example, for some people who say we're in New Eridu, the places look the same. Okay, so what about a mission inside of a huge mall, for example, or in the station, because these places already exist in the map. Not only that, they can,
or in a park with some colour, with some trees, with some like bright looking stuff. The game's like got this pop punk vibe. A lot of areas don't feel like you're in this kind of cool, vibrant, beautiful world.
and also add more dynamic, like things to interact with, and this will be
I don't know if it's a purposeful
I agree
design
with that.
to make characters pop more. Not sure.
Completely. All of the level designs are really crappy. First of all, even if we ignore the fact that there's very, very little variety, they don't look all that detailed. They don't feel particularly immersive to me. They're
Plain.
very, very samey. You get the same ones over and over and over. I just wish that they had put a little bit more effort into that. The second city, Lumina Square, or the second area that you unlock later in the game, is super, super, super laggy for me. It's really bad. Really hard on my computer, where the rest of the game, for the most part, is optimized relatively well. But the level designs in terms of where you do combat are just the same areas.
I feel like so much was put into the new Eridu area, and it's still quite small and boring. Visually, it looks nice.
Every single time, just the same areas, and they're not that detailed. They're not that visually exciting. I wish they had put a little bit more effort into those levels, because I agree that Hoyoverse is good at making beautiful looking areas and is making making things look really cool. I wish they had done more of that. But yeah,
Just look at some of the environments in Honkai Star Rail. Not to mention Genshin, but just look at some of the environments in, you know, because I think if you're going to look at the way the levels are built, it's probably better to compare it to Honkai in that sense, because it's a linear game. I know it's turn-based combat that you go into instances separate from where you're at, but the areas look pretty, they're pop, they're interesting, there's lots of stuff going on, there's cool things to look at. This game lacks all of that.
yeah, the level designs are pretty bleh.
the thing about the world is I don't really care a lot about this, but since I saw a lot of people in the community ask for it,
It might not be a thing I think you care about at the start, but I think once you start getting hours into a game, if everything looks the same, it definitely becomes draining.
and as I said, we don't want to use a lot of personal preference in this video, and we want to know what the actual game needs, which is make us use our characters in the overworld. Like, instead of using Bell or Wise only, you can have the ability to use one of the other characters in.
That's a good point. That's a good point, actually. And I've never thought about it. I was well, I kind of did, but then I was like, oh, you're the proxy, and this is how you live in the proxy life, which makes sense. But let's face it, all the other games in the gacha space, even when you're doing something as a particular character that's a story beat and it makes sense to be playing that character, you can play as who you want, and it is nice to be able to do that, isn't it? So yeah, I think that's a good point as well. Because you got these cool, you're getting all these different characters that you're pulling for. That's what you want in a gacha game. You want to be able to look at them as much as possible, don't you, really? You know, especially if you spent money, to be nice to be able to wander around the town or do these little beats, looking at your cool character that you really like the look of.
The overworld.
Let me zoom around as the
Feel
short,
sorry.
please.
Feel sorry for all the Wise users, because Wise is so boring to look at. Not just because I'm a dude and he's a dude. Like, the comparison of the design between Belle and Wise. Belle looks really cute and she pops and she looks well designed. Like, a bit of thought was like, it's almost like she's designed to be the main character. Like, Wise just looks so boring.
I want to zoom as Shork and run around and zip around. Please. It's so lame.
I don't think this is hard to implement. Maybe you can do this in the future, I don't know. But I think it's a good change, it's okay. Now let's talk about harder things to implement in the game that can make the game better, but we're just coping at this point in the video, okay? Buckle up. The first thing is add an extra ability to every character. This will make the game more in-depth and more complex, but I don't think that's what they want to go with. But I
I personally think that part of the reason you don't have as many abilities abilities is because there is sort of that fighting game influence where they want you to learn the tech. And I think perhaps hypothetically, the game could do a better job of showing you said tech. You understand that most people
Agree. It doesn't show the nuance of how to squeeze every ounce out of your characters and your team and the synergy. It kind of leaves that up for discovery. Now, that might be a conscious choice that they want to make. So there becomes that sort of community of people trying to learn, you know, like how games used to be. So I suppose that could be a cool idea if they have designed it like that. It just feels a bit weird because, like I say, the game teaches you to be brainless and then it's not all that brainless, but it doesn't ever show you that it's not brainless, you know? It's like the class clown that's just always the class clown, but really, they're actually really smart. But you just think they're an idiot because they're always sticking crayons up their nose and chewing on fucking paper and just acting the fool. And they're really, you know, they've got a freaking 140 IQ. I don't know. That's kind of what it feels like to me.
people, like a lot of people don't play fighting games though, right? So for fighting game players, you might say like, oh, the tech is not that interesting. It's not that much. But for people who don't play fighting games, it's actually really cool and engaging to learn about, and it's cool and engaging to use. We have to remember that this is a gacha game. At its core, this is a gacha game primarily for mobile players because that's what gacha games are for. And anybody else
That's what it is. It's because it's designed primarily for mobile players. That's why I think I'm a big fan of Wuthering Waves, even though I know they want the mobile audience. That doesn't feel like a game that is designed for mobile players in any way, personally, because just the way the combat works. I just don't understand how people can do high-level hologram shit on a mobile. If you're doing that, respect, because I cannot get my head around that. I don't know if the controls are simplified. Well, they've got to be to a degree, but I don't understand how you can go up against Mephis on like the higher level holograms like 4, 5, and 6, and you're on a phone and you can beat it, and it's not just your characters are over leveled and you just DPS fucking checking the shit out of everybody. It's just crazy to me, that is.
else who gets enjoyment out of it is sort of extra. It is okay for them to have a simplistic base of combat where you can add on with your higher knowledge and have more skill expression. Somebody who put this really well into words was Gotcha Smack, actually, where Elden Ring is an incredible combat-focused sort of game, right? Like, the combat is the most important thing in Souls-like games for the most part. There's not a bunch of abilities that you can do. Like, you can take a bunch of spells and do all kinds of stuff, but the reality is that the basic way that you play these games is you smack with your sword, you roll to dodge, and you can parry, even though it's not near.
The thing is, with Elden Ring and Souls-like games is a lot of the nuance comes in with your builds, doesn't it? It might not necessarily be the mechanics, it comes in with your actual builds. Well, I suppose the argument could be said that's kind of similar, I suppose, in the way this is built, but your gear and being able to swap out gear and all that sort of stuff and having different weapons and your items and stuff definitely affects how you play a lot more than I think the layers of nuance to the combat in this game.
Nearly as useful in Elden Ring as this game. Anything extra is how you build, but the combat at base is incredibly simple in Elden Ring, and the skill expression comes from learning movesets and stuff like that, and knowing how to play around the simplicity of it. Learn the hidden tech if you want more, skill expression if you want more depth. Or
I agree with that to a degree, actually, but I just think the expression ceiling in this is a lot lower.
hit
End of the day, though, it's going to be, isn't it? Like, look at the type of game Elden Ring is, so, you know, I agree.
X and use your abilities in an approximately correct way, and you'll be fine as well. I think for a casual audience, that is fine. I think that the beginning of the game does a very poor job of making you care to learn such a thing.
I think they don't want
Exactly what I said, yeah. It makes you play like a zombie. It doesn't teach you to want to learn that. It's just like, hey, just smash the shit out of things and learn your parry. That's pretty much it.
to make the game more complex. They want to make it super simple. That's why I think this is a hard thing to do. But and also, like, what makes it hard is that they need to add the new thing in every character. Maybe they can do that.
It's the bosses that make it complex. Yeah. And so they should make better bosses. The long and short of it is, A, they should force you to learn more of the character stuff as you go
Agree.
through the game, because they do a bad job of doing that early game.
Yep,
They should have better
facts.
bosses and better enemies so that
Facts.
you do have to play around it. If you want simplistic combat, make better bosses.
With future characters, actually, you know, if the game has power creep, who cares? You know, they will do it. Another thing which I put it here because a lot of people were conflicted and divided about it, which is make parry timing a little less. I'm one of
Yeah, I think the parry window should be a little less. It feels like you can almost go for a cigarette and come back if you smoke, and you can still go for a parry, you know? And that's not saying I haven't missed parries, you know, like, because, and I think the main reason why, personally, I'll miss parries sometimes is because the game's taught me to play like a zombie, and I'm kind of just on autopilot, which, as I say, as you get to that more difficult combat, it kind of, that happens because the game's taught you to just play like a zombie. So then you're like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, this has changed a little bit. But it's not because the parry windows are incredibly small or the enemy's got great patterns or there's good mechanics. It's just because you've kind of switched off.
those people who disagree with this, which, by the way, I
disagree as
like the
well.
parry timing to be less. Like the parry timing in this game is like 3 seconds. But again, if you want something super hard with super insane parry timing, just go play Wuthering Waves and another gacha game. But, you know, I think
I'm gonna be 100% real with you here. This is perhaps a bit of a Hoyo shill take. I actually kind of like that the parry timing is not as difficult in this game. I think it could be made a little bit more difficult. I do think the parry window is
That's why just add another difficulty level into the game. Like, for me, that's what challenge mode should have been. That's what challenge mode should have changed. It shouldn't just give the enemies more HP and have them do a bit more damage. It should change those fundamental mechanics, in my opinion. Parry times are shorter. You know, you need to get your buffs and your switches timed a bit better, but the parry time will be one way to make the combat a little bit more difficult without fundamentally changing the game, and then just make the enemies a bit more aggressive, really, and have some patterns that you have to learn, which, you know, that might be a thing that later on you do have to start to learn that sort of stuff. I don't think so, though. I just think maybe they're going to become damage sponges.
pretty big.
Hope they
Wuthering
don't,
Waves
though.
parrying feels kind of bad sometimes because you're
Wow. Okay. That's a hot take to me. Let's see what you got to say.
timing it per character animation. So the parry timing of every character is different, and I don't like it. It's
See, I like that because that adds nuance and complexity, and you have to learn characters differently. You know, like, say you got your Gion, your Crayonita character, and then you've got somebody like Jinsei who can do. People are talking about power creep with Jinsei, and she can put out insane DPS. You got to work harder to get that DPS out of Jinsei. She's like, Jian's a safe character. Jinsei's not. You know, you're a lot more likely to get your combos broken and get punished for trying to do the moves with her. And I like that, and I like the extra level to the parries and it being tight. I think that it's one of the best things about the game, personally. Well, within the combat as well.
hard because I'm dumb. I'm a stupid idiot, and I'm not cracked like Maddie Chu at video games. I'd love it in Zenless if they made the parry timing a little bit less, very slightly, not a ton. Honestly, I'm not even that cracked at parrying, but that's because in Elden Ring, I always dodge. I don't use parries. I have small brain. I simply roll. At first, I felt like the parry
Everybody knows that's the god tier way to play those games. Oh man, just roll, baby.
system and Wuthering Waves added a lot of complexity, but now it just feels like unnecessary complexity that you have to time it per different animation per character. Even two sword characters have totally different parry timings, and it feels sort of crappy to me,
Yeah, I just disagree with that.
especially after playing this, because the parrying is pretty powerful in this game and nice, and it doesn't do damage.
a lot of people want to make this game another Wuthering Waves.
Parrying is super powerful in Wuthering, though, in my opinion, especially when you start getting a bunch of parries, because it can really add up to stunning your characters. Like, I disagree.
And again, I do enjoy that, but I think this game will always be a little casual. I want to add some other hardcore
And that's fine. I would like it maybe not to be, well, like I say, difficulty doesn't take away from being casual. Like, I'll need to separate that and stop saying casual. I would like it to have a bit more complexity in the future, but if it doesn't, that's fine for it to just be this kind of brainless, brain rot game that you just jump into now and again and just have fun with it, because it's still fun. The game is still fun.
things in the game, but for this thing, it might be not that good for some casual players. I didn't believe that, but I saw a lot of comments arguing about that, and they don't want to make the parry timing a little less, so it's okay. Another thing that a lot of people felt is that the progression in the start was kind of slow, at least in the first 10 hours of the game, and I think that
kind of felt bad as well.
most people agree that the first 10 hours of the game weren't that good. The start of the game, I think most people agree that it was mid as at best.
Dude, we need to get Ellen.
First of all, very, very based Evangelion music in the theme in the background. I hear that. I hear the Evangelion theme song back there. Go off, slay. You like two of my favorite animes now. We're gonna have to say that Steorg is pretty heckin' based. Let me re-listen to what his point was because I just got really excited hearing the Evangelion theme song.
10 hours of the game, and I think that most people agree that the first 10 hours of the game weren't that good. The start of the game, I think
Yeah, no, the start of the game is crap. If you're somebody that likes One Piece, I think you could get into this game. And by
Massive filler.
that I mean, if you're someone who is okay with when the people say about an anime, well, if you just get like 500 seasons in and watch for 2,000 hours, it does get good. If you're one of those people, I think you can get into this game. You
One Piece, though, I've never properly watched. That's kind of like Naruto and DBZ. But for me, they get good straight away. But it's just like, you know, some fights, man, it's like, dude, holy shit, this feels like it's been going on for days.
usually I am not, but I'm glad that I kept going.
most people agree that it was mid as at best. Like the game wasn't very good at the start. You know,
No.
maybe get some modes a little earlier, make the internet level requirements for some stories a little less. You know, a lot of things like that that reduced the
One Piece is good from the start. I don't care because I'm not watching 1,000 episodes of anything. I'll let y'all know another anime that I don't like because I didn't think it was good within watching about 8 episodes was Demon Slayer. Go ahead and be upset with
It's a hot take.
me. I think Demon Slayer is really, really pretty garbage.
first hours grind so you
Damn, you know she's got some people mad with that.
can get to the fun. Hey Hoyoverse, I fixed your game. You have to pay
Based.
me right now. So anyway, I made this video to make the community less divided, to at least voice their concerns even more. I don't know, maybe devs will listen one day. Who knows? Anyway, if you don't
No.
subscribe now, you're gonna lose your 50-50. Bye-bye.
Part of the problem
Do we think Hoyo will change things within this game? I don't know. Maybe this will be the little side piece that does get some love in that sense because they know it's not going to be the behemoth that Genshin is or Honkai is. And I suppose time will tell on earnings. But I think if this becomes a bit of a good earner, but not a massive earner like they are, I think potentially we might see those changes because they'll want to keep people engaged and draw them in. I think the problem sometimes that potentially with Star Rail and specifically Genshin is it's kind of a victim of its own success because I think Genshin know it kind of does, well, the Genshin devs know it kind of doesn't matter what they do. They're still going to make, and they have made, a shit ton of money. And I think as well, Genshin's probably never going to have any major changes anyway because the game's been out for 4 years now and it's probably coming to the end of its life cycle soon. I would imagine they'll probably squeeze it for everything it's got. But Star Rail's the main star of the show now, isn't he? This is the extra side piece, and we'll be seeing another game coming soon from Hoyo, I think. There's all this talk about potentially being an MMO. I guess we'll see. But yeah, I think this potentially maybe could have. I don't know. That's all just conjecture though. We ain't got a clue, have we? I guess we'll see. Time will tell.
with content creators is that we play games. We don't really know anything about making games, and so we can pick at what feels like a pain point or pick out what we feel like doesn't feel like fun. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we know how to fix it. We can give suggestions or speculation about what would help.
We can say what doesn't feel good, what we hate. Or it's easy to say that when you don't know the complexities in fixing it, do you? Isn't it really, you know? But it still doesn't mean that we can't bitch, bro. Come on, you know?
But that doesn't mean we actually know nothing. I really enjoy this video. I like Steorg a lot. I think he's a really level-headed guy, and I really enjoy hearing his thoughts on things. And again, I'll be putting...
Yeah, some good points in the video, actually. Some good points. Probably would have been a good idea if we went straight to the video. We'll definitely check out some more of his content, for sure. I've never watched his stuff before. I've heard his name mentioned before, but I've never watched his stuff. But I like that video. And I like some of the points that Hex made as well. Actually, disagree with some of them. But yeah,
Out my own
It's a good
review
video.
of Zenless Zone Zero very soon, so keep an eye out for that.
we might have to copy as well and put out not a review, but a thoughts on the game. I don't really do those videos often because I always struggle when I'm not bouncing off. That's kind of why I like doing these react videos, because when I'm watching these, I can form my thoughts a bit better. I like to bounce off other people, even if I agree or disagree. It just allows me to more easily come to my conclusion and express them better. When I'm trying to sit down and record a video, dude, my brain just turns to jelly, and I can't freaking, express my thoughts in any kind of eloquent format. Not that I do that anyway. You listen to me and you can tell that. But it's I don't know. I just always struggle to sit down and record videos just off my own thoughts in that sense.
Hope you guys have a lovely day. Come join us on Twitch at twitch.tv/Hex.
All right, good video. Definitely a good video from Steorg there. You should check out Hex and Steorg as well. I've just dropped a sub to Steorg. We'll watch some more of his content in the future, actually, because it looks like he makes quite level-based and what seems, so far, for a son of him, unbiased content. And he made some really good points, actually. Stuff that I hadn't even really considered myself or thought about. So yeah, how to save Zenless Zone Zero. I don't know if those points will save it, or will it even need saving? I don't know. Maybe it's going to be a runaway success. I don't think it's going to be as big a success as the other, so, but 50 million downloads in a short period of time is insane. Insane.